of ignition.
Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to The View from Here, Behind Enemy Lines. I want you to please rate and share this podcast. Share it with whoever you're friends with online, and give us a 5-star rating. If you can't give us a 5-star rating, you can only give us a 1. Don't bother giving us a rating. It's okay.
That includes you too, Jeff.
We are available on several platforms, including the one we're going to be talking about today, that Jeff Dornick here, our guest, has started, something called Pickax. It's a new, let's see, if I recall correctly, you're pushing freedom of speech and freedom of
reach.
Of reach, that's it. Yes. Anyway, take it away. Jeff, introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to chatting with you guys. For people that don't know me, I've hosted the Jeff Dornick Show since probably 2020. Interviewed a bunch of amazing people. I've had Kash Patel on the show and Senator Ron Johnson and people like that. Been banned every which way you can possibly think of for talking about COVID one too many times, or election fraud and all the usual things. And the last couple of years, I've been building out a social media platform, like you said, called Pickax, and the whole idea behind it, obviously, is to have a free speech platform. But there's plenty of free speech platforms that are out there. Our main thing as well is really confronting and dealing with the algorithmic manipulations you're seeing on a lot of these other platforms that artificially limit your reach, your access to your audience that you've earned. And so everything that we do is through the guise of how do we connect you with your audience more effectively, more efficiently? How do we help you to monetize your content more effectively or efficiently as a content creator, as a podcaster, or a journalist, or a writer, or something like that? And then everything that we do is through that lens of how do we amplify humanity, amplify your voice, and then so we put the humans first. And then we'll figure out how to monetize. We'll figure out how to do all that kind of stuff on the back end, as opposed to the rest of the platforms where everything is about how do we monetize more for the platform. We're looking at it as we will make money as a platform when we help you guys, the creators, earn revenue. So it's just a different way of looking at things from that perspective.
And when did the idea come to you? In 2020, was it, or was that when you started your own show elsewhere?
So 2020 is when I started my own political podcast. Before that, I had a Christian theological podcast where I'd interview pastors and theologians and all that kind of stuff. But I've been building out Pickaxe for about 2 years. So it's been about 2 years, about 2.5 years, where I got an investor. I got a phenomenal dev team, and we've been building it out. And so right now we're technically in pre-launch. Where we've got the web version is out right now, but we're going to be launching the app fully in about a month and a half. And we've got the beta app is available to some of our users who've been testing it out, and it's going to be phenomenal. So.
Yeah, I did request to be part of the beta test. I don't know if you saw my email. But I mentioned we were going to be interviewing you today, and I asked, does that give me an in?
Oh yeah, no, I'll hook you up for sure.
Okay, cool. Thank you. It's easier than going back to the browser all the time, especially since my browser on my phone, I have literally hundreds of open windows that I want to go back to now and then.
Yeah.
So how are you going to keep bots from going into your platform?
Yeah, so technically speaking, you can never fully keep bots off necessarily, but what we've actually done is we're basically rendering bots useless. So there's no point in them doing it. So if you want to be seen, if you want to trend, if you want to influence people, really grow your account and all that kind of stuff, you really need to be verified. And we have a free verification system in place. So we don't charge for that. And that's really our way of combating bots. That was kind of what Elon pitched, but he didn't really fully implement when he bought Twitter and turned it into X. But what we're doing is we're basically making it to where, like, look, if you want to be seen, you want to trend, you want to be recommended, you want to do anything outside of somebody directly searching for you and finding your account and following you, and you want actually organic growth, then you need to be verified. And so if you're not verified, then we have some certain kind of like limits on things that you are able to do and access and build and grow and all that kind of stuff. So if you are trying to run a bot on Pickaxe, you're not the content's not really going to be seen. You're not going to impact, verified accounts and whether they trend. So basically, you're rendered useless. So there's really no benefit truly to a bot coming onto Pickaxe, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, and it's something I like.
Well, the interesting thing is that the nobility of thought is critical to being. So what you're doing is you're creating a platform that not only allows people to go ahead and express their thought, but also prevents them from being avalanched with lies and more difficult for psyops to be used on your platform.
Yep. Well, because the psyops that are being run, which is happening every single day on social media, left, right, Democrat, Republican, every which way you can possibly think of, a lot of the psyops are starting with these bot farms, and I'm a firm believer that the CIA and intelligence agencies, both our government, foreign governments, everybody, are using bot forms in order to push certain kinds of propaganda that benefit them and benefit their narratives, or get people to work so confused, and chaos agents and all that kind of stuff. And it's almost always starting from these bot farms, basically. And so that's one way that they are changing public perception right now and sowing so much discord. And I think we're seeing the results of that with after in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk, where even the Republican Party, there's so much infighting, there's so much attacking, and a lot of, you could say, that quote unquote misinformation is coming from these anonymous accounts and these bot farms that I can almost guarantee you are coming from bad actors and intelligence agencies and all of that, trying to manipulate the masses to do what they want us to do, which is to turn on each other and be distracted from the craziness that they're actually implementing on a massive scale.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because a lot of times lately mainly on Threads, okay, where I post a lot. I've seen a lot of bots, because I go to their page and they've posted nothing, right? So I call them out and everything, but I'm just one voice in the wilderness that's probably lost to 99.99% of the people on Threads. But it is a big problem, and I'm glad that you're doing something to try and eradicate, if not, or at least minimize it.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that what I really want is, I want people to talk to people again, because because if you look at the statistics, I think, depending on the numbers you're looking at, anywhere from 60 to 80% of accounts on social media platforms are bots. And so the vast majority of the conversations that you're having with people, you think you're talking to a human being, you're talking to a robot, you're talking to an algorithm, you're talking to an AI computer. You're not actually talking to a human. So you're wasting time, you're wasting energy, you're wasting emotion on a non-emotional, basically algorithm. And that's again, it's keeping people distracted. And what I really want to do is, I want you, when you're on Pickaxe and you see that blue check mark, that the person you're talking to is who they say they are. And so then that way, you're getting emotionally invested in this conversation. You're building online relationships, friendships, camaraderie, all that. It's an actual human being. Like when you look at what Elon's doing with Grok, and they're rolling out, like baby Grok now, and companions through AI, where you can build, friendships and all that. Mark Zuckerberg's taking this on a massive scale. So Mark Zuckerberg actually invested $65 billion into developing artificial intelligence, specifically for the purpose of having AI generated content creators. And what they're trying to do is, they're trying to make it to where humans just become the consumers, and then the AI and the platforms themselves become the content creators. So they can control the Overton window, they can control the advertising, they can claim to be free speech, because they're never going to have to censor their AI robots. And so all we become are consumers. And Elon's been talking about this as well on a bigger scale than just social media, where he's actually talking about that there was going to be no more human beings in the workforce altogether, and it's all going to be Optimus robots and AI. And he actually just said on the Joe Rogan podcast and a few other interviews and the Tesla shareholders meeting that what he's using capitalism in order to replace all human jobs with AI and robots, and basically usher in a communist utopia. His words, I'm not paraphrasing, a communist utopia where we just become consumers. They'll pay us some, basically a UBI. We have our brains connected to the internet. We just think it comes to existence, the whole deal. And you're taking away purpose. You're taking away our creativity. You're taking away our ability to have our own thoughts and rationalize and debate and discuss. And they're just trying to turn human beings into consumers, and that's a massive problem we're going to have to deal with at some point.
There was an
Well, this
old
was the problem
science
with.
fiction.
Go ahead,
Pardon.
Mike.
There was an old science fiction story. I believe it was named "Being Taken Care of by Machines: A Loving Care," and it is that premise that in an environment where the machines do everything for you, those people that strive would for something that is personal, that is actually a truly interactive experience, those people were singled out. So the thing is that, and then what happens is that, of course, as the reader, you're seeing the facade of relationships, and you're just watching this hero just constantly being buffeted by this unstoppable array of influencers. And one of the problems that I see with AI is, do you know, like when Atari started out and they created the Pong thing and it came into your house, nobody had a computer. All of a sudden, we had a digital device inside of our house. We wanted more. So they got in through entertainment. And then all of a sudden started becoming important, especially when you had a little program that supposedly could balance your checkbook. And all of a sudden, bang, it started off. And computers became not just a device for work, but also an entertainment. AI is actually creating a crutch where people are going to get products that they want from AI developers, and it makes the human beings that interact lazier and lazier. And maybe initially their products will be excellent because they have the insight as to what questions to ask. But as we become more and more dependent on the output, we also become less and less capable of requesting good output.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the crazy thing about but AI in general is that, you know, it so for example, like my CTO, she does a lot of dev work for some really big, you know, corporations and all that kind of stuff, and they're using AI in order to develop certain apps and websites and all that kind of stuff. And the one thing that she always tells me is that, you know, the AI that they use for coding with these big corporations, she's like, it's only as good as the developer. You know, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people see AI as that shortcut where, oh, anybody, you don't need any kind of intelligence or whatever it is, you can just use AI and they can pop out an app or pop out this or pop out that, when in reality it's only as good as the person that's behind the AI, and only as good as the large language model, is only as good as the database and the developer of the AI itself. And so there's a lot of components, and but the problem is that so many people are relying on artificial intelligence right now that it's stunting development. And that's one of my main concerns when it comes to like Elon rolling out baby grok, and, you know, that's going to be targeting kids, is because so it, you know, for example, I have a 3-year-old you know, son, right? He no screens. We don't have him watch television, no access to phones, no access to iPads and all that kind of stuff. He's like one of the only kids in his circles that where it's like that. And but it's interesting because, you know, he's developing at a faster rate than all of his friends and all of his peers. But it's because and this is just my theory, we're not putting him in front of screens. Because when you think about it, like, we sit down, we've been reading to him since he was an infant, right? When you read a story to a child, they're listening to what you read to them, and then their mind is having to imagine the voices, imagine the scenery, imagine the characters acting out what you are reading to them, right? So their brain is working. When they're watching television, let's say watching a show, their brain doesn't have to work because the show is giving them the audio, the show is giving them the visual, the show is giving them everything. They just become consumers. It's that much more amplified when it's artificial intelligence, because now it's not just telling a story, that they're just vegging out and consuming. Now it's the information. Now basically you're not teaching them to critically think or to rationalize or figure out a solution to the problem that they're facing. You're teaching them to go ask something else, or in another word, trust the expert. And then the expert, in this case the AI, will give them the information. They don't have to think, they don't have to rationalize, they don't have to spend time trying to figure out a solution to the problem that they're facing. What they're having to do is ask a question. AI will immediately give them the answer. So we're going to, when you think about it, we're going to grow up, we're going to have a lot of really smart, dumb people, because they're going to have access to all the information in the entire world, but they don't know how to process it. They don't know how to, they don't know anything outside of what this AI robot teaches them and tells them. And that's a major problem for the future of humanity. And this is where, when you start talking about like Elon, where he's wanting to usher in a communist utopia, at a certain point, communism always fails because there's a lack of resources. And when people are just consumers, what's the point of continuing to support consumers that don't actually contribute anything to society? Like, so at a certain point, they're going to begin to cut people off and push people off to the side. And then you have a bunch of people that don't know how to do anything, that now they've been relying on this technology their entire lives, and then they get cut off. Now what happens to them? This is going to be a major crisis for humanity coming up very, very quickly.
Well, one more thing I want to add to what you suggested. You were talking about reading to your child and that the whole interaction. And you talked about a lot of technical interaction. But one of the things that you didn't mention, and I'm not saying that you're unaware of this, I'm just saying it wasn't mentioned, which I think is extremely important and we keep ignoring when it comes to AI, is number one, there is an emotional connection between you and the child. That child is receiving emotional support and love, compassion, and consideration, which is AI can only mimic that. It is nothing more than a facade. And this is one of the problems that human beings are going to have, that constantly interface with AI and get what they consider emotional feedback, is delusion. Because you can't tell me AI loves me. All you can tell me is AI is behaving in a way that I would perceive it as love.
Yep. Yeah.
So you become
there's a growing movement of kids, especially in Japan, I think, that are dating, basically dating AIs rather than dating real women or men. You know, that's going to be a problem. And I remember when my kids were small, I used to read to them a lot. The oldest, he loves to read. He reads a lot to this day. The youngest, he kind of has like ADD, a little bit of ADD and so forth. Hasn't kept him from being very successful in sales and as an entrepreneur. But he doesn't read much. My grandkids, unfortunately, because they have the phones, they're on those things all the time. You know, I mean, when we go out, for example, when we go out for my son's birthday or something, he'll tell everybody, put the phones in the middle of the table. And everybody has to do that. One time, about 2 years ago, my grandson balked about it. So Tim took him outside and gave him a talking to, and then came back in. You know, but so he never again gave him a hard time about putting the phone away. But nobody likes to put their phone down. They think they're going to miss something important. Meanwhile, for most of our lives, at least Michael and me and I, somebody didn't catch me at home because they called and I wasn't there or I didn't answer. They're going to call again later. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing was that pressing when you think about it.
Yeah, but now we think everything is.
I want to add to what Roy said because he triggered me. He said that in Japan there's people out there that are dating AIs, and he made that sound like a bad thing, when in fact there are one or two cases I can think of where dating AI is superior, such as, I should have dated AI instead of my ex-girlfriend. I have to throw a joke in every once in a while.
Well, it would eliminate divorce.
You know? That is completely fair. Well, you know, and it's interesting when you think about it, because of one of the things that technology does, like you said, it can only mimic humanity and mimic human relationships. It doesn't actually have that connection. And one of those things, like even I think that we're facing a problem right now where even like we're having this conversation through technology. There's still a level of disconnect between us compared to if we were actually sitting down talking face to face. And I can tell you, like I've spoken at conferences and events and whatever it is. If somebody comes and hears you speak, right, as a speaker, right, there's a level of connection with them sitting in the audience and hearing you speak versus them sitting in front of their computer and watching you give the exact same speech on the computer screen. There's a disconnect through technology that's only amplified when you take out the one or both of the human beings on either side of the screen. So that's amplifying it even more. The other thing that I think that I think our society forgets a lot of times is that when you're dealing with technology in general, and this goes across the board, whether you're talking about biotech, you're talking about technology, you're talking about like synthetic foods or 3D printing, all that kind of stuff, there's a sterility within that technology brings to everything. And I can tell you that when it comes to music, when it comes to art and entertainment, there's something about human creativity that I don't think AI will ever actually be able to replicate. But when people get sucked into this, they're living in this kind of more synthetic world, and they're going to be lacking of a wide variety of things, whether it's emotional development or human connection. So there's going to be more depression, there's going to be more mental illness and all that kind of stuff. Like when you don't actually have that human to human connection, that's a massive problem to society, and we're already seeing that especially in major cities. When you're looking at the teens, the rampant mental illness, and a lot of it is because of things like isolation, of like things like feeling like I'm alone, I have no connections. And AI can only do so much to where it can keep your mind going and you can communicate back and forth, but you're missing the actual human to human element that you actually need when you're face to face with somebody. And that's what, like for me, again, I'm running a social media platform and I'm trying to figure out how do we have like in-person events to where we can bridge that disconnect between the online world and the human world, to where we can build some of those relationships and then use the social media as something in addition to the human to human connection, as opposed to replacing it, which is what all these other social media platforms are doing.
As a supplement.
The metaphor I would use in your disconnect issue would be analog versus digital.
Yeah.
Analog is about gradation, and to some extent is seen to be infinitely gradient and nuanced, whereas digital is on or off. I have a suggestion for your site, since you said you want to expand the capacity for communication. Add color. Allow people to add color to their statements. And perhaps maybe you could even have it voice driven. This way people can feel what you're doing visually. I mean, I forget what the term is when a person can see color in their, but anyway, that's just an idea that just popped in.
Yeah,
Sometimes
that's an interesting
I'll watch
idea for sure.
Historical videos on YouTube and so forth, and I've always been interested in history. But lately, when you can tell it's AI, especially when it comes to certain things, like it won't be able to pronounce certain things the right way, or it'll you get to an anagram and it will spell out the anagram rather than pronounce it, and it just ruins the whole experience for me. I'd rather have a human being talking and explaining it, even if they stumble once in a while on a word or something. Which is why Mike and I, this podcast is never edited. Okay, I mean the most I've done is ask the AI thing here in Riverside to maybe take out a lot of pauses if we're talking. And Mike and I usually used to do podcasts ourselves, and then there were maybe 10 or 15 seconds of dead air time. It removes that, but I still don't like the result because it seems to jump from one thing to another. I don't like it. But the other thing about AI I don't like is it depends on who's programming it. What answers you're going to get. I use AI. I use Grok, and I use it mainly in lieu of search engines. I use Grok, and then I know I've learned enough that you have to sometimes either specify exactly what you're looking for or refine your search afterwards. There was one time when I asked something about Charlie Kirk's assassination. President Trump's attempt, the attempted assassination on Trump in Butler. And Grok came back, which surprised me, said he was alleged to have been shot, da, 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 da. I said, wait a minute, what do you mean alleged? It's been proven that he was shot this day. And then it came back and it apologized to me and said, you are correct. There was an assassination attempt and he was shot near, da, da, da. But I had to correct it. And I don't know why it would, it went out there, looked at all the search engines, and this is the information it found that was mostly out there was from the left that, it was a fake. It was a setup. It was this, that. And it came back with that. And then when I pointed out, no, you're wrong, it apologized and gave me the correct answers.
Yeah.
Gave me the answer I wanted.
Totally. And I've got two examples that kind of piggyback off of what you're saying. One is there's a guy that he's actually on Pickax. His name is Ted Rall. He's a leftist political cartoonist, lifelong Democrat, all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because he wrote a piece in one of the major news outlets, like a critique of ChatGPT, because he went in and he looked at ChatGPT and found that it was spreading online smears that it had found about him when asked about himself, right? And so he's like, who's responsible for AI if it slanders somebody, right? And so he wrote an article about that, and Sam Altman over at OpenAI didn't like that, so they actually deleted Ted Rall from existence within their database. So if you go over to ChatGPT today and you type in who is Ted Rall, it'll begin formulating an answer. And then halfway through spelling his name, it'll stop and say, we're sorry, this is a violation of our terms of service. We cannot complete this action. And so he's been completely deleted from existence. Now, here's the crazy thing about that. OpenAI also has government contracts with the federal government. So using the same large language model, using the same database that they're using. So now you have an American citizen who's a journalist, he's won all sorts of awards and prizes, all that kind of stuff for his work. And he's deleted from existence, and that same large language model is contracted with the federal government for AI purposes. So now, allegedly, depending on how they're applying that technology, he may be at a disadvantage in dealing with something with our own government because the AI that's being contracted with our government doesn't even recognize that he's alive, doesn't even recognize that he's a human being. So that's a problem. Then there's another example of a good friend of mine, Rachel Alexander. She's a journalist. She writes for Town Hall, Epic Times, all that kind of stuff. She was actually the former Maricopa County elections attorney for many years, and so she understands election fraud better than I think anybody out there that I know. And she actually got into a Twitter debate with Grok over some of the cases that Trump had brought, and she highlighted that there were all the cases where the Trump team had actually won in court, and I forget how many cases there were, 20 something odd cases out of 90, that went to court, and Grok kept telling her that she was wrong, and Grok kept going back to the mainstream media outlets as its evidence. And what she would do is she would then bring the actual court documents and say, well, here's the court documents, here's the link to it, here's the evidence that shows that, no, you're actually wrong. And Grok would not admit that it was wrong. And then when she kept proving it wrong, it would then begin smearing her and saying, well, you're a this, or you spread conspiracies, or you're not credible, and tried to discredit her publicly because she was showing, here's court documents showing that Grok is wrong, and Grok would not admit it because it was relying on the New York Times and Washington, all that kind of stuff.
So Grok is a Democrat.
Yeah, Grok is relying on the mainstream media, and that's the problem, right?
Exactly. If this had happened in 2020 when the Biden regime was in power, I mean, it was bad enough they were denigrating anyone who spoke out against the vaccine or other things, or the shutdown and so forth. It would have been reinforced by AI all over, and more people would have believed it. Even people who doubted what we were being told would have come to believe it. And that's the danger of that. I like Elon, to paraphrase the guy in The Godfather. I like Elon Musk. I respect Elon Musk, but I no longer trust Elon Musk, okay? Because he wants to put chips in everybody. That, I don't know. I've talked to Michael about this once in a while. It's like the You've talked to pastors, so obviously you have spiritual, if not religious, background or feelings. And the Antichrist is supposed to come on as a great guy, everybody loves him, and so forth. But then after so many years, the bad side starts to come out. And I said, I wonder if, and I don't see the Antichrist as one person. I see it as a hydra, for example, with several heads, and one of them being Islam, by the way. And yeah, you can. Anyway, so Elon Musk, by planting chips in everyone and having everyone connected to a grid, all of a sudden it's like that Tom Cruise film where they know what you're thinking and they're going to arrest you long before you commit the crime you were even thinking of.
Well, you don't even have to go into fantasy. Look what happened in California when they wanted to go ahead and utilize the grid in a particular way, the electrical grid. They shut off people's smart devices that were controlling their heat and air conditioning or whatever.
Oh,
so yeah. But
yeah,
one thing I want to say is that when you're talking about this basically shunning of an individual, which is an old way of destroying people. Like in the Amish will use shunning. The Native American people throughout history have used shunning, and the more connected you are to that community, the more harmful it is to you. But so I want to mention this one individual who we were fortunate enough to interview. His name is Kira Shishkin, and he created Informed News. Now he's using AI in an interesting way. He's asking AI to grab through various news sources a composite of what's being said about a particular subject, eliminating the opinion, and basically dumping the raw information as reiterated by all of these things. But what's also interesting is I think he follows your lead. He has human beings look at that and edit it to make sure that AI isn't off into the weeds.
Yeah, and it's so important. Like if you're going to go down that route with artificial intelligence, you have to. It's like you almost have to have human fact checkers, because it's so easy for AI to go rogue. And that's one of my concerns. Kind of going back to how the Trump administration is implementing AI on such a massive scale right now. And this is deeply concerning. And this is one of the things. And I always preface these kinds of conversations with, I voted for Trump 3 times. I would have voted for him 4 times because I wanted him to run for president back in 2012. So I was a Trumper before there were Trumpers, right? But I'm looking at the results of this administration, and there's a lot of good that is happening. You know, illegal immigration, the borders getting shut down, all that kind of stuff. But what the Trump administration is doing with artificial intelligence could be far more catastrophic to humanity and to our country than anything Kamala Harris would have ever done. And this is why. What AI is now doing is it's centralizing the power to a handful of people. If you look at what the Trump administration is doing, they are centralizing the decentralized databases. Right, so it used to be that the states would have their own databases, each of the bureaucracies would have their own databases, and what the Trump administration is doing under the name of streamlining everything and making things more efficient, with like Doge and all that kind of stuff, is they're centralizing the data into humongous databases, and this is so that way they can implement artificial intelligence on mass scales, again, under the guise of making things much more efficient. The problem is that's also giving much more power to the federal government because they have the power. Now, you could make the argument that guys like RFK Jr. and Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard and Donald Trump, they wouldn't abuse that. They're doing this for the right purposes. What happens if and when Gavin Newsom wins in 2028? Now you've got all this centralized power within one massive federal government with the power of artificial intelligence, and then all Gavin Newsom has to do is just, hey guys, can you change this database, or we want to manipulate the information that you're pulling from here, and then all of a sudden now this is being weaponized against all of us. And as opposed to if we had a decentralized system where the states had their own databases, each of the bureaucracies had their own databases, it wasn't all centralized in one big massive thing, we could be somewhat protected and have some sort of checks and balances. But what the Trump administration is doing is they are fast fast tracking this, and they are federalizing this onto this national federal scale that could be, depending on who gets in office next time around, could be the end of America as we know it, because there is no coming back. We know that when the federal government takes power, they almost never give it back to the states or to the people. So this is something that you get Gavin Newsom in there, or you get one of these crazy Democrats in there, it's over. America is done because there is no more checks and balances.
I can
it was
understand
already
why.
bad enough when they signed, when the 51 intelligence officers signed that document saying that Trump was involved with Russia, the Russian collusion hoax. That was without AI. Now, if AI gets involved, people are going to tend to believe it. More people are going to tend to believe it. I mean, a lot of this has been debunked, but a lot of the debunking has not been heard by people who only listen to mainstream media. And with the help of AI and the people running AI like Altman and so forth, who lean a little towards too much to the left, I think it's going to be worse. And you were talking about California turning off electricity and so forth. These data centers are huge, and they need a ton of electricity. There's not going to be enough electricity to run them and the grid to keep your home warm or cooled in the summer, or to plug in your Tesla and charge it. You're just not going to have enough.
The thing is, the way I see it is, Trump is reacting to a worldwide race for AI. So the other problem is, if we don't have an AI of our own, then we'll be overrun by foreign AIs. So it is a two-edged sword. It sounds to me like the story of the Golem, where it's a Jewish story. If people haven't heard it, they created this magical creature called the Golem that would protect them. Unfortunately, it became so powerful, and then it ran amok, and it became their greatest enemy. And
leading to Terminator movies.
Well, the Bible talks about this, with where the up until for the first part of the Old Testament, Israel was actually guided by prophets, right? So the prophets would talk to God, God would speak through the prophets, and basically God would be, they lived in a theocracy, right? And then all of a sudden, the people of Israel saw the rest of the countries had kings. Like, hey, we want a king too. We don't want to rely on these prophets, and rely on God. We want a king just like all the rest of the country. So what do they? So then God spoke through the prophets, and we're like, well, we could do that, but just know they're going to reign over you with terror, and they're going to be corrupt, and they're going to use and abuse you, and you're not going to be happy. No, we want a king. We want to be like all the rest of the countries. And then what ended up happening to Israel? I mean, they fell apart. They fell into all sorts of idolatry and child sacrifice, and they got split into two, and they got overrun by other countries. Why? Because they turned their back on God's ways, and they started looking at all the rest of the countries. Well, we want to compete with them. We want to be just like all the rest of the countries. But that was their downfall at the same time.
Well, Scott Adams, who's got a podcast I've listened to for years, he keeps bringing up every once in a while the fact that AI hallucinates. And how are we going to tell if AI is hallucinating about something, or was programmed to, for example, collect data only from mainstream media, which is leftist controlled media, or if it's telling us the truth? How are we going to be able to tell?
You're going to have to. People are going to have to learn to trust, to think for themselves, and gather their own data, if at all possible. Our greatest enemy, when it comes to just technology in general, because this is not just an AI issue. This is about technology touching every aspect of our life, is convenience. The more convenient something becomes, the more dependent you become to that convenience. And what happens? AI is digital. Guess what? All of the digital interactions with convenience are controllable. And who are they controllable by?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the thing is that, but at the same time, if you want to interact with the present world of man, you need the technology. I mean, that's what we're using right now. So what if AI right now decides to shut us down? What if AI right now chooses to recreate our conversation and put words in our mouth that it has enough data to be able to go ahead and duplicate our mannerisms.
Well, that's where the critical thinking comes in. When you're dealing with AI, you're questioning it, and you're getting answers that you don't know are valid or not, whether they're valid or not. And then you have to refine your original question and dig down deeper to find out, look, are you telling me the truth or not? There was one test where somebody did something where they said, if you have to say no, but you would honestly say yes, just say whatever phrase it was. And it went and did that like 200 times or something during that test. I forget. Scott Adams spoke about it a couple of months ago. I can't remember what I think it was Chat GPT.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did it too. And I don't know who conducted the test, but it was obviously programmed to say yes when it should have said no, but it was admitting it because they'd given it instructions to do that.
Sure. Yeah. Well,
you have to know how to manipulate it.
Yeah, and I think with what you guys are talking about, I would totally agree with you when we're talking about the public forward AI with all of us, right? So when we're engaging with AI, we can't play along with this caricature of AI that it's this neutral arbiter of truth, because it's not. And we need to use critical thinking. I think that's very important. What I'm concerned about is the government implementation of artificial intelligence, because there's calls for the replacement of judges with AI judges, because they're pushing. Elon was talking about this. We've had even some Democrat politicians talking about this, where what they're saying is like, this way we can get rid of activist judges. We can have AI because they can be this neutral arbiter of truth, and it can make decisions within minutes, as opposed to having to go through weeks and weeks of court cases and all this kind of stuff. You just provide your documentation, it'll analyze it, and it'll make a judgment call. Like this is what they're talking about. Then you look at like the FDA. Right, we know how corrupt the FDA approval process has been traditionally, since the beginning, right? And so, they would always, I think every single vaccine that came before ACIP was approved for the vaccine schedule. Like they've never turned anything down up until RFK took over. It's like, when you think about it, they're now RFK is implementing AI in order to fast track FDA approvals of drugs and vaccines and all of that. Well, where's the fact checking on there? Because I can tell you, when I'm looking at the Comirnaty vaccine that the FDA approved for the COVID vaccine that first came out with Pfizer, I could go back and I could pull up the original data, real world examples of the fact that they acknowledged that there were people that died over the course of the study, that they only did the study for 7 days, that this many people contracted COVID, this many people didn't. It didn't matter whether you were vaxxed or unvaxxed. You had a more than 99% chance of not contracting COVID-19. So I could look at the data and I could analyze it. But if you're having AI doing the data, how do you fact check AI if they're just going to look at the studies and the information that's provided to them by big pharma? You're not going to have real world examples. You're not going to have actual human beings able to look at anything or judge it or fact check it, because the AI is just going to make this decision. How do you appeal? How do you override? How do you have that human element to making sure that this wasn't hijacked, that this wasn't rigged? And then you're gonna have to get into nuanced debates and conversations in court cases with this expert over here that's an AI expert, and this person over here that's an AI expert, about what the code is and what it's going to be so convoluted, as opposed to decentralizing with human beings and checks and balances like our founding fathers originally intended. They're eliminating all the checks and balances that our founding fathers intended for this country by fast tracking everything with AI.
The problem is that you cannot produce compassion out of a digital product. Compassion is not equal to utility. So not wasting you because you are useful is not a form of compassion. It's a form of utility. And the problem is that we as human beings require emotional content, emotional integrity. And there are things, because the world is an artistic place, not simply a mathematical product. So there is a lot of esoteric stuff going on, and we are basically human beings are basically this hodgepodge of ideas held together by spirit. So the thing is that to live in that world where your life is determined by a mathematical formula and not someone or something that has some sort of sense of you, that is hell.
Yeah, that's for sure. And the thing is that I think it was a couple of years ago, Elon had a conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu about the future of AI, and Netanyahu asked him, what's the end game here? Where's this going? And Elon said it's going to go one of two directions. It's either going to be Terminator, or it's going to be heaven on earth. Netanyahu asked him, okay, well, let's go with the heaven on earth option. What does that look like? It basically, nobody's going to work. Your brain's going to be connected to the internet. You can think something, it just comes to existence. You're on universal basic income, which now they're calling universal high income, which I think is even more dangerous because it's not going to be coming from the government, but coming as a quote unquote dividend from these tech companies for taking away your jobs. And so you dive into this, and I'm like, he's describing the Pixar movie WALL-E. It is, you just become a all-consuming blob of flesh. You don't produce anything. There's no humanity to it. There's no human connection. There's no grace. There's no mercy. There's no anything. It's literally just mathematical equations. And you're just sitting here and you're like, why are people not outraged by this? You're taking away our humanity. Like yes, we want justice for people, but we also do want grace and mercy as well. Because as a Christian, I'm a firm believer. Like, if we all got justice, we will all go to hell. Like, we also want grace and mercy. We also want compassion. We also want to be able to help each other. We also want to be there for each other. We want that human relationships. There's something special and unique about human to human connection that you're never going to get here, and that applies in court cases. It applies before the law. It applies with families. It applies with everything. And I think that we've got to figure out a solution to this problem, because this is being fast-tracked. In the Trump administration right now, they are making it to where states are not going to be able to regulate AI at all. And I get the argument, because you can't have 50 different regulations that a company has to go through. But also at the same time, that's 50 less entities that can protect the constitutional rights of your God-given rights that are being violated left and right by these AI companies. And so we've got to figure out a way to, if we're going to go down this route of AI, also preserve and protect our God-given inalienable rights that the government does not have the authority to take away. And I don't see anybody doing that.
Well, you're producing this platform called Pickax, which to me reminds me of data mining. But anyway, the thing is that perhaps one of the ways that you can out AI is to actually constantly put things up to a vote and let the real verified people just generate a vote. And then this way you can get an answer which is human, And so that's essentially what these platforms are for, is conversation, but they're usually individual driven. But it would be kind of interesting if you could go ahead and have some people actually try to coalesce the entire consciousness of the group into an output.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that like Elon's been talking about with like what he's trying to do with AI is get the overarching human consciousness, and collective mindset of everybody, and kind of aggregate all the information together and all that. I think for me, I'm looking at it a little bit closer to the way the founding fathers envisioned America, to a certain degree, where they valued the individual. So they saw that the government's primary responsibility was to protect the God-given inalienable rights of the individual. They weren't their job was not to protect the collective. Their job was to protect the individual. And so for me, I'm looking at it from the perspective of how do we protect the individual sovereignty of people and their own God-given creativity and thought process and all that. So what we're doing actually is trying to find more ways to make that connection with people, but then also give people an opportunity to continue that conversation. So like, for example, within Pickaxe, you can write an article. We're leaning very heavily into long form content, although you can still do the quick hits and the Twitter type, posting and all that. But it's like we're rolling out. We've got, you can write an article, and then underneath the article will be other similar, topics to what you're writing. We're actually going to make it to where people can actually reply to an article with another article, so you could actually continue the conversation, maybe see opposing opinions and opposing perspectives. That way you can kind of get the full picture of, well, this is what this person says, this is what this person says, and then you as an individual can kind of make up your own mind. So we're looking at it through that perspective of how do we amplify the individuals, and so then that way that instead of having fact checkers and voting and all of that, you as an individual that's a consumer, you're looking at this, you're like, okay, well, I read this article, I read this other article, I saw this podcast, I saw this video, all around this same topic, and then I can make up my own mind who made the most sense, or maybe I'm going to pick a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and reject this over here. That's kind of the way that I'm envisioning how we're rolling everything out with Pickax.
But how are some voices going to be louder than others? So this way they get through the minutia. Because the thing is that, let's say, there are some people whose opinion I consider more valuable than others. If I hear them in an argument, I'm going to look at what they have to say and probably be a bit more discerning. Plus, they may also bring more to the table. So the thing is that how do we know that conversation is respected by a larger majority?
Yeah, well, so my job as a platform is not to pick winners and losers, right?
Okay.
And so you as an individual, you decide who you follow on the platform, right? And so your news feed is going to be specifically people that you follow. And then the only exception would be that if somebody that you follow, let's say, comments on somebody else's post, that post will show up in your news feed, and then showing the comment of the person that you do follow in there. So if you're following 15 people or 20 people or whatever it is, and let's say there's a journalist that you really like, right? And he goes and he responds to, let's say, my post, and you would then see my post with the person that you follow, their comment on there. So then so you're the algorithm, and I'm actually working on t-shirts for our people that basically say I am the algorithm, because you're the one that decides what gets seen by not only yourself, but then also what gets seen to the people that follow you as well, based upon your engagement, based upon how you engage with other content as well. So, and then, instead of using algorithms to decide what's trending and what's showing up and what shows up in news feeds and all that, it's up to the people. So the people decide based upon their engagement, based upon their commenting, based upon their, if you like something, you pick it. If you don't, you axe it. That's built into the platform. So you have control in showing what's actually going to be seen across the platform as an individual.
So by diminishing the amount of control, you've actually increased the amount of reach.
Yes, exactly.
Very good.
Yep. So there's one guy. His name is Aaron Everett. During the RFK Jr. campaign, he made a lot of videos. Kennedy would share his videos all the time, throughout the campaign. And he posted, because again, we're still technically in pre-launch with the platform. We're launching the app here in the next several weeks. And but he posted that he's like, I have 10,000 followers on X, and he's like, I just started on Pickax and I've got 100. And he's like, I'm already getting more engagement on my Pickax post than I am on X. And it's 10,000 users on one, 100 in the other, and he's getting more engagement with the 100 users. He's like, I would rather be on the platform with a much smaller follower base, where they're actually engaging, than have these big massive numbers and nobody's seeing my content.
That also counters what's known as the documentary effect. Because if you watch documentaries, and Scott Adams pointed out the example, if you watch the documentary that showed Michael Jackson was indeed a pedophile, you came away convinced he was a pedophile. A couple of weeks later, you watched the other documentary, which showed, no, he was a victim, he was not a pedophile. And you walk away saying, no, he's been screwed by history. But the documentary effect could conceivably get canceled if you have somebody states this opinion, somebody else counters it, then somebody else counters that, and they keep going back and forth. So that you have a long enough thread that people will be forced to use their critical thinking skills, or forced to develop them anyway. These days, nobody is taught how to think critically. And then they can make up their own minds rather than be told, this is what you have to believe. Especially with AI involved, AI saying, oh, this is how it is. and people automatically take it for granted that the AI is correct. It can't be wrong. No, the AI is not God.
Yeah, it's a
Not
great
yet.
point, and I think also, you know, within that standpoint as well, what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to create a culture of, you know, people figuring out what do I believe and why do I believe it. And, you know, again, I've been a political commentator again going all the way back to 2020 and all of that, and I've really checked out of the political, you know, discourse to a certain degree, and I'm more focusing on like, what do I believe, why do I believe it, because that makes making the decision on how you vote and who you support and who you align with so much easier than just getting sucked into to political partisanship, right? And so for me personally, one of the things I'm trying to do within our Pickaxe community specifically is trying to foster, okay, what do you believe? Now let's talk about what we believe. I don't have to mention Trump. I don't have to mention Republican Party, Democrat Party, this, that, or the other thing. Let's just, like, what do you actually believe about these issues? What is your worldview, and what is that based on? What is that rooted in? And it's really interesting. And I always use this example. I think it was election night back in 2020. I was invited to go on a leftist podcast, and it was funny because they introduced me and they go, "Okay, we're so far to the left that Bernie Sanders looks like the Tea Party," and I'm like, "Okay, this is gonna be fun." And but we got into this fight over illegal immigration, and they were ranting and raving about, you know, Trump being a racist and this and that and the whole deal. And I was like, okay, clearly you guys don't live in a border state. I grew up in Arizona. I've got a lot of friends that are illegals. I've heard the horror stories of what it's like for them to come across the border. You know, I've literally had conversations with people that have dealt with the cartels. The cartels literally, not only are they using them for sex trafficking and drug trafficking and all that kind of stuff, but they're charging them something like $20,000 or $30,000 a head to come across the border. Clearly, these people don't have that kind of money. So what do? They when they come here, they work here, and then they have to send money back. You know, they always talk about sending money back home. You know, from working here, they're sending money back to the cartels to keep their family alive, because the cartels will essentially hold their families ransom and say, look, if you miss a payment or you're not paying us back, then we're going to murder your family. And so these illegals are here in the United States having to make, you know, not only support themselves while they're living here illegally, but then send money back to the cartels to keep their family alive. And so I went onto this leftist show and I'm like, you guys realize there's sex trafficking, there's drug trafficking, they're sending these girls across with birth control because they expect them to get raped by the cartel members. And then you have these cartels that are holding these families hostage. I was like, if you have empathy and you have compassion for these illegals, you would want to shut down the border and end the control that the cartels have over these people, and then open up some sort of pathway in order for them to immigrate here legally and take the power away from the cartels. And I had them on board, and then I made the stupid, idiotic mistake of talking about that's why Trump was building the wall. And I never should have mentioned Trump, because then they go into this whole big thing about, yeah, but this is racist and all. If I would have just stuck with my main worldview point and looking at the facts and not mention the political party or the candidate, then I would have won. I would have won in a landslide that conversation. But I made the stupid mistake about making it partisan. And so I think for me, if we can focus on the worldview, we can focus on the issues, I think we can begin to change minds, let people figure out how that applies when it comes to voting and who they support and all of that. But I think the more that we change minds and we change worldviews, I think we'll begin to see a change in the electorate over time. But it's just, as long as we're focused on this partisan, you know, politics, we're never going to get anywhere.
Well, I had something that I feel is related to what you just said. I have a good friend from where I used to work, and pretty much a week or so after Charlie Kirk died, I brought the subject up, and you know, he immediately said he was a racist, and I was like stunned, because I wasn't what I would call a Charlie Kirk follower, but there was no evidence of that in the viewings that I saw. So I simply asked him, well, what exactly did he do that was racist? And dead air. So just allowing yourself to be educated by a person who is that far off opens up that vacuum. And I said, oh, I'm going to send you the information. Well, I never got it, but I did send him information where and this is a bit racist on my part, I found a black man defending Charlie Kirk because I thought that would be a stronger image since we're dealing with emotions. And he went through I didn't know about all these misunderstandings that were generated, but all these lies. Charlie Kirk mentioned the fact that, the imbalance between the amount of black population versus violent crime. And the numbers are strong. And the thing is that, so the problem is that people see that as racist because they probably were told, well, he's just lying, or he's just, they don't understand that, these people are being put upon and they're forced to whatever the justification is. So the thing is that my newest gimmick is allowing myself to be ignorant and allowing myself to be educated by those people who make outlandish comments like that. And it changes the conversation. Instead of getting into a debate, I'm going, really? Ooh, what did he do?
Yeah, you asked them a question and it shuts them down because they don't have the answers. They only have the conclusion, which has been drilled into their brains.
And the important thing, and I've actually changed. Again, I live out here in communist California, right? So I'm surrounded by lefties, the whole deal. And I've changed. I've changed people's minds simply by asking pointed questions and shutting up. And the thing that I learned long ago dealing with sales is he who speaks first loses. So what you end up doing is maybe you portray or you explain like a fact, like what you did about like Charlie Kirk or whatever it is, and then you ask a question, force them to rationalize their position, and then shut up. And like you said, like a lot of times there'll be silence, and you'll see the wheels turning, and you'll be tempted. You want to jump in with the information because you can see you've got them. Shut up, let them rationalize, because eventually they'll either stick their foot in their mouth or they'll realize I don't have the information like I thought I did. And I don't have the truth like I thought I did. So the best thing that we can do is ask questions and literally just shut up.
Yeah. I'm going to go full-blown Christian on this and say, by showing them the compassion and the love of allowing their voice to be heard, you disarm them and you stop being an adversary.
Yep. That's a good point. It's very, because I mean, when you think about it, look at the cancel culture that's happened. And the people that have been canceled over the years are more powerful today than they were before they got canceled a lot of times. Look at somebody like Alex Jones. He got banned off of all the platforms simultaneously on the same day. And he became more powerful after he got canceled than before. Whereas if they would have just kept him on the platform and just, let's say countered his viewpoints or just flipping ignored the guy, like, he would have had his own little echo chamber of people that were following him or whatever it is, but like he wouldn't have had the kind of influence that he amassed after he got canceled. And I think that that's something that that I've thought a lot about, especially as I'm building out a platform, is not canceling bad ideas. And obviously illegal activity, calls for violence, like stuff that like legitimately is illegal. Sure, we're gonna ban that. We're gonna deal with that, right? But like, we're not going to deal with bad ideas. We're not going to deal with quote unquote hate speech and you're banned because of hate speech. Why? Because when you ban that, then they become more emboldened because now you actually justify their behavior because now they feel persecuted and then they can amass their following to actually say, oh, we're taking on the system. But then also they're never going to be challenged with the truth. They're never going to be challenged with an opposing viewpoint, and their audience is never going to be challenged with an opposing viewpoint. Everybody's up in arms right now about Nick Fuentes, and everybody's platforming Nick Fuentes. Well, here's the problem. Everybody who's calling for the cancellation and never platform Nick Fuentes is a part of the problem because you guys gave him power, because you never challenged his worldview. You just try to cancel him, you try to shut him up, you try to do all of that, as opposed to making him look like an idiot for his viewpoints. And because you have the truth on your side. Like, that's the interesting thing about that conversation that Tucker had with Nick Fuentes, is I came away with a completely different outlook on that conversation than the vast majority of conservatives. Like a lot of people, they're like, he basically, I think everybody just wanted Tucker to yell at him and say, "You're a racist, or you're a Nazi." The way I looked at it was Tucker was like an elder talking to an immature little kid. And when he started talking about like, his, basically hatred of the Jews and his derogatory view of women or whatever it is, Tucker was kind of like it was almost like, are you kidding me? Like you clearly don't have any real life experience. And he was kind of talking down to him, but a little bit more like an elder pulling a little kid aside and being like, you need to grow up a little bit. Like here's the truth. Like, we don't judge people based on their DNA and all that kind of stuff. I think everybody wanted him to just rake him over the coals, as opposed to just like let the truth fall where it may. And I think we need more of that than let's destroy people, deplatform people, cancel people, and the whole deal. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Steven Crowder, I haven't, I want to watch it. I haven't seen it. But Steven Crowder last week interviewed Nick Fuentes, and I'm interested in seeing how that went, because from what they've said on shows after that, they kind of exposed Fuentes in certain areas, but they said he does have some good points in other areas. So I'm interested in seeing what that conversation was about.
Yeah, if you have an individual or a group which you have disagreement with, how can you go ahead and address the disagreements if you don't hear them? So it is essential for, in a free speech country, a country that has the First Amendment, and which allows people to speak freely, allows people to gather freely, allows people to pursue their religious beliefs. Then what happens is that by allowing for that open dialogue, we get to see who you are. We also
this is how the country was started too.
Yes.
Sorry.
So the thing is that if this individual is denied interaction with others, then you've constricted him, and they become denser and denser and more egocentric. And then they could become a problem. They could pop, and they could show up with an AR-15 someplace and take out a bunch of kids.
Yeah. That in all reality is why we have so much hatred in this country right now. Is we've all been siloed into our own little echo chambers, and people don't hear opposing viewpoints. And I think a lot of times on the conservative side, we basically accuse the left of being sheeple, and they just only care about their own little echo chambers and all. No, we do the exact same thing, and I just don't think that we realize it. And I think both sides are siloed and hate each other to a certain degree. And we've got to figure out, how do we actually talk to people? Like
Right.
I can't tell you, like I've been canceled by conservatives for having conversations with people that I quote unquote shouldn't have conversations with. Everybody is always like, why are you talking to this person? Why are you giving them a platform? Well, because we need to talk. It's kind of like what Charlie Kirk said all the time, which is like, if when we stop talking, that's when the violence happens. And I think that's what happened in Charlie Kirk's example, is that both political sides have stopped talking to each other. And what's ended up happening is people, instead of talking and debating the issues, they try to discredit the other person on a personal level. And so then you never actually get to the issue. It's about them as a person. You're a Nazi. That way, it doesn't matter what you say. If that person's a Nazi, then anything that they say is wrong. It doesn't matter what they say. And that's part of the problem that we're dealing with, is we've got to figure out, how do we take the personalities out of it? How do we take the person out of it and just focus on the issues? Because and here's the interesting thing. And again, everybody is always shocked when I say I live in communist California and all that. But people at their hearts are much more conservative than people realize. Democrats are much more conservative when you realize, and we're much more unified on our American belief system than most people actually realize. And that's the really interesting thing, is because we're forced to debate on the wedge issues that we'll never agree on. But I always use this example, like take abortion, which is an extremely hot button issue. There is consensus in this country that we should not allow abortions in the last trimester. You could probably even argue that there's probably 2/3 of this country that believes that you shouldn't have an abortion in the second trimester. Even out here in California, where the wedge issue is does life begin at conception? So for me, logically, the way that I would look at, okay, let's ban abortion in the last trimester because we have consensus. Let's even, we should be able to even bring it to a vote on the second trimester because we do have consensus. Where the wedge issue is is the first trimester. Where the wedge issue is conception. And so it's like we can't even vote on the last trimester because we're over here fighting on, does life begin at conception? Well, let's focus on where we do agree. We do agree on a very large part that we shouldn't be doing abortions in the 8th month. Let's deal with that first, and then let's move to the next thing where we have consensus.
So
but
what
people
you're
don't want to do that.
Let go of the distractions.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
what you're saying is, let's put the minutia aside and let's focus on the core issues that we can communicate about. But one of the things that listening to you triggered me was, I think that the thing, if a person wants to go ahead and be engaging with somebody who they've quote unquote deemed as being on the opposite side, I suggest they develop their humility. And humility is one of those traits that has been forgotten, like honor. And the thing is that, to me, humility is allowing yourself to admit that you might not know what you're talking about, that it's okay for you to be taught. And that doesn't mean that you've changed your side. That means it's my turn to listen. It's my turn to give you 100% of myself and not judge you while I'm listening. And to admit that maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. It could happen.
Yeah, or you might even be wrong on not thinking about one particular perspective on it, and to where maybe it doesn't change your entire worldview, but maybe there's like either like an exception, or maybe you tweak this thing over here. Like that's the thing about being challenged and having this level of humility. And I always say, I enter into every debate and I tell everybody, I'm going to put my best argument out there, but I want you to overcome it. And a lot of people get frustrated because they're like, you're not letting go. You're not letting go of this. Well, you're not overcoming my objection. It's like I'm trying to give you every opportunity to overcome every objection that I have, because I want to see, does my argument hold up to scrutiny? And then you leave the conversation and then you go back and you self-reflect and you're like, okay, did they make a better argument? Do I need to rethink something? Like there's that humility that you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, convince me. It's like Crowder's Change My Mind. He'll go out to a college campus and he'll have the thing, this is that, and so forth, and change my mind. And he has a conversation with students that way.
What you think is so important that it should be held on high, you need not have to prove it. It will prove itself. That all you have to do is just hold hands and allow the communication to flow.
Yep. Totally agree. Like if you have the truth on your side, you don't have to resort to smear tactics. You don't have to discredit the other side. You don't have to get angry. Like that's the thing, is like for me, like I don't think I've ever gotten angry. Like I'll have political debates at Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas. I've never gotten angry at anybody for having a different opposing view. I'm honestly curious. Like, why do you believe that Trump is Hitler? Let's hear your conversation. Like I'm intrigued by okay, like I want to get in somebody's mind. Like, why do you think this way? Like, I want, give me your best, like, what's going on here? Like, I've never yelled at anybody. I've never done anything, but it's because I don't have, and I guess this goes back to my Christian worldview as well. But with evangelism, when we share the gospel, my job is not to save people. My job is to share the gospel. It's the Holy Spirit's job to do the saving. So it takes my responsibility of saving that person off to where, my job is to share the truth with you. I can be as convincing as I possibly can, but if you reject Christ and you reject the gospel and the truth of the gospel, it's not my fault. It's just the Holy Spirit maybe didn't open your eyes, or you didn't repent, or whatever it is. But my responsibility ended with the sharing of the gospel. And I think the same thing goes to debates and political discourse and all of that. The pressure's off of me. It's not my job to get you to agree with me. It's my job to share the information, hear your perspectives as well, and then give you an opportunity to maybe rethink something that maybe you hadn't thought about, and then just realize that maybe they're not going to change their mind in the heat of a debate, but maybe they're going to go home and they're going to be like, he did make that one good point. Maybe I need to rethink that one, again. And so it's like our job is just to share the truth, and it takes the pressure off, and it kind of takes that emotional hostility out of the debate and out of the discussion.
Yeah, well, the initial shock that all of a sudden you're on unsteady ground can be so uncomfortable. and it's hard to get past that, especially
makes
if
people angry.
it's radical. If it's like completely out of left field, if somebody tells me Trump is a Nazi, I've heard that 5,000 times. I go, really? But the thing is that when I heard Charlie Kirk was a racist, I was floored. I was completely dumbfounded, and a combination of anger, confusion, and I couldn't believe the person I was talking to actually thought that.
Yeah.
The thing is that, and again, my first reaction was, because I've trained myself to say, give me an example. And it changed the course. And unlike you, I'm not interested in debating anymore because I don't win those debates. I just don't win them. What I do is I try to just ask the question like, okay, and I'll come back and I'll look and see and learn how they got that thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically remain friends with them. Because as long as I'm their friend, then we have hope.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good point. I think for me the way that I look at things is that if we want to save this country, we've got to change hearts and minds, and we're not going to do it through the mainstream media. And I've even changed my perspective on my role and responsibility as like a podcaster and a show host, right? Is that I'm not my job as a podcaster is not to change the left's mind, because the left isn't going to see my shows. My job is to equip the people that are watching my show that agree with me. And it's kind of the same thing. And this is where I think the evangelical church has largely failed in the country today, is that what they've replaced real evangelism with invite your friend to church on Sunday. Well, the way that the early church was established, if you go back and you look at the book of Acts, church on Sunday was for the believers. And so the pastor's job was to train and equip you on Sunday to go out into the world to do ministry. But how do we do church in America? It's everybody comes to church and then you watch the pastor do ministry on stage on Sunday. That's not ministry. That's not the pastor's job is to equip you to go out into the world to do ministry. And I think that's kind of like, from a political standpoint, as a podcaster, that's kind of how I view my job as well. My job is to arm you with the truth, arm you with information, get you to think through some of these things, figure out your worldview, whatever it is. So that way, when you go out, you're confident in what you believe, and not just what you believe, but why you believe it. And then I want people to go out and have conversations, ask questions, converse with people, and just be a genuinely nice person to people that disagree with you. Like we've got to tone down the rhetoric. We've got to tone down the hostility, the division, the divisiveness, the hatred. Like, if we're going to save this country, it's going to be on human-to-human relationships. We're not going to do it on a party basis. We're not going to do it through the media. We're going to do it one-on-one conversations and building friendships and building relationships and overcoming the algorithmic silos that we all find ourselves in today. It's like we've got to figure out how to get back to that and be okay with disagreeing with each other and not absolutely hating each other.
That sounds like what Jesus did with the apostles, preparing them to go out into the world and spread the word. And I remember I was watching The Chosen, and where there came one point where they'd been with him for a while, and then he sent them out, and they felt totally unprepared. Then he sent them out and said, "Don't worry about it. Just do your best. It'll come to you."
That was fantastic. One of the things that I believe is that declaring ideological teachings, regardless of whether it's religious or political or whatever, because some political positions are ideological. My primary task as a representative of my views is to simply be helpful. Like, somebody's got a problem opening a door, I open a door for them. If somebody needs a hand, I give them a hand. Sometimes I even go up to complete strangers and just tell them a joke. And the thing is, I wear a MAGA hat all the time. So my objective is this. My objective is, I'm MAGA, but I'm a nice MAGA, and maybe other MAGAs are nice too. So by setting an example, by showing that I can be a good human being, I don't have to teach anybody anything. I'm showing by example, which is a Christian ethic. Lead by example. So, that's another thing, is like some of this stuff is easy. It's just we're lazy. Like, we don't want to help that woman with her garbage can. We don't want to stop traffic to let this person cross, or wave somebody in so they know that they can park into that space. Those little things add up.
It's like just be a good human being. And that's the thing, is like when you look at what the Democrats do, the Democrats, they apply the empathy from a governmental structural standpoint, and they're completely wrong in that. And they always cite Jesus as like, well, Jesus talked about we got to help the poor, we got to do this. It's like, no, that was an individual basis. And conservatives and Christians and Republicans make that argument all the time. It's like, no, it wasn't the government, it's supposed to be us. But then, are we actually doing that? That's the thing, is that I think that we've allowed the government to come in and handle dealing with the poor and dealing with the widows and the orphans and the people that are downtrodden and the people that are struggling and being hurt and all that kind of stuff. And we've allowed the government to fill that void. But traditionally, especially in American history, that used to be the churches that filled that void. It used to be the churches that would come in with the charities and the organizations and the soup kitchens and all that. It wasn't the government. And I think that, it would
societies.
be, yeah. And so it would be incumbent upon us, if we want to be intellectually consistent in our argumentation, don't just oppose the government intervention, but actually come in with a solution and say, sorry, we don't need you. We've got this handled. And don't wait for legislation to go into play and that for them to, take it away. We should be going in and just going into our local community and saying, like, no, we're going to take care of the situation as a congregation, as a church, like, and to where it's no longer needed from the city or from the county or from the state. Like, that's the kind of thing that I think that we should be focusing on as Christians and as conservatives as well.
Yeah, that's the problem with the government doing it. People don't want to do it. They'll say, oh, they take money out of my taxes and they use it, so the government's going to take care of it. I don't have to get involved. But when the North Carolina hurricane occurred, you had people saying the government's not doing its job. We're gonna do what we can do to help. And even before the government proved it couldn't do it, they were already helping other Americans. That's how it should be.
Well, the thing is that since I was a kid, with the Johnson welfare state established and a lot of other things,
it's a great society.
we have become the great symptom is that we are constantly looking for agents other than ourselves in order to resolve our issues. In a sense, pre-AI. So we're looking for somebody, somewhere, something to handle our situation, and which makes us lazy and dependent, which we've been talking about through this entire show. The thing is that we need to. One of the things that I've said in the past on previous shows, I came up with this one thing, said the main difference between a present Democrat, and a Republican or conservative, let's say conservative because Republicans are weird. Okay. The main difference is a leftist needs a group in order to be strong. A true conservative will stand alone. And that whole idea of intellectual independence, of true independence, where, listen, I'd love you to come along and help me, but if you won't help, I'm doing it myself.
And that's Martin, when he stood up to the Constitutional Congress, and he told them centralizing power is a bad idea. And he spent 4 hours on a long speech. Everybody, but they were respectful. They listened. It was hot. Everybody wanted to just get out of there. And he warned them that the Virginia plan would lead to basically what they were escaping under Great Britain. And eventually he did convince them to go another way. He didn't vote on the Constitution, didn't sign it, but it led to the Bill of Rights and other changes.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately in recent years politicians have been dismantling.
The American Civil War was unconstitutional as far as I'm concerned, even though, I root for the North because I was born in the North. But the fact of the matter is that, they seceded. They didn't want to be part of the United States anymore. Well, they're in, what is it, in New York, was it Staten Island? They want to secede. Yeah, do it. West Virginia seceded from Virginia. So the thing is that secession is not illegal. And if the constituents of a particular region don't have autonomy over themselves, are they free? No, they're not. So
Western Oregon wants
liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Well, where's liberty? The freedom of being able to say no. Now, I don't agree with what the South was doing, but the fact of the matter is that they had the right legally to go ahead and say, we're done with this. And we said no in the North. And it caused, I think that was a major break.
Jeff, you've been very generous with your time, and I appreciate it, but I'm worried. Are you okay with this, or do you have to go soon, or what?
No, I'm all good. I was just gonna say, I think that with Lincoln, I see it's really interesting because I see a lot of similarities between Lincoln and Trump, in the sense that I think they both had the right gut instincts, but they both had a mentality of the ends justify the means. And I think there's a certain, from a strictly a constitutional perspective, there's a there was either a lack of understanding or not necessarily going along with it. Like what you said with Lincoln, is that he participated in this Civil War for something that the South had the right to do, which was to break away from the United States because they felt like their state rights were being violated and were being limited by the federal government. And so they technically had the right to do that. Now, Abraham Lincoln, again, he ran, as the first president from the Republican Party, and they were campaigning on we're gonna end slavery, which is a righteous cause. Let's end slavery. But the ends justify the means, and I find the same thing with the Trump administration. There's a lot of things that they are trying to do that are righteous viewpoints and righteous causes that they're doing, but they're not always going about it in the right way or in the constitutional manner. And so it's like you can support the cause, but still critique how they're going about it and how they're doing it. And I think that same thing applies to Lincoln that applies to Trump is that I think there's a lot of things that they're doing. They have the right gut instincts in the sense of the issue and the cause, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the way that they went around that they went about it was the right way to do it.
Well, the problem with the Constitution is it's written in English. And the thing is that there is the spirit that spawned it is not going to be equivalent of the language, although it can come very close. Now, a lot of people, they look at it, and I do this myself. I look at it and go, that could only mean one thing. And then somebody comes up with another interpretation. Whose is right? So the thing is that I'm pretty pleased with my views, and I'm not going to budge for the most part. But I also understand that people who have taken more time and energy to study the history and maybe, I know something about these gentlemen over here and their history. They read these books. This is what they really meant. In other words, it can become extremely complex, on the deriving of blah blah blah, the deriving of its ultimate meaning. Now, and that is a problem. And the thing is that the biggest problem I have with the law in general is that the law seems to be interpreted by the person with the best credentials, and instead of
Seems to be.
right. So you know what? Maybe an AI. I hate to say it. Maybe an AI going over it, could give us a third interpretation.
But
And
but the
that would
question is
allow
who's AI and who programmed the AI?
There you
mine,
go. Exactly.
mine. Yours. I'll tell you what, Jeff. It could be yours.
There you go.
There
There
you
you go. Although I'm on the anti-AI approach, so we're definitely not doing that with Pickaxe. So
It's just that when we talk Constitution, there's some really sophisticated people that spent their entire life studying Constitution, and they can't agree on some things. So if you have experts, and I'm afraid of using that word anymore since the COVID days, experts on the subject, and they can't agree upon it, then I feel incapable of adding to that conversation because I don't have their background. Now, maybe my innocence is an advantage in this. Maybe my lack of presumptions, on the subject. But that's why the First Amendment is so big for me. Is because I think that pretty much makes sense. Say what you want, whenever you want it. Pretty much, you have the right to speak. You have the right to gather, which was taken away from us. Actually, all these rights were taken. The right to speak, the right to gather, and the right
Some of these experts,
to worship.
Some of these experts, like, for example, Jackson Katani Brown, probably Biden's worst DEI hire. She just recently said that Trump should not have the right to fire experts in science and government and whatever. Okay, the experts the last 4 years have proven how fallible they can be, and she's still supporting it because she is not using her knowledge as a lawyer. She is using her ideology to render decisions.
there's a reason why when God established his church and Jesus established his church when he came down, there's a reason why his disciples and the apostles were largely blue collar workers. It was simple. And who made Christianity complex? The theologians, the ones that go to seminary, the ones that go to school. The gospel is super simple, but the church makes it extremely complex. It's literally just believe that Jesus is God, that he died on the cross for your sins, and follow after him. Like, literally, it's the simplest message you can possibly come up with. And the church has made it so complex. And I feel like the same thing with our country. Like, we have these Bill of Rights and the Constitution and the Declaration. It's a simple document, like, when you think about it. The founding of this country was not the elite of European aristocratic seminaries and what, like, it was like the people that fought the Revolutionary War and led it were largely like farmers and blue collar workers and people that lived off the land. Like, they were simple people. And what ended up happening? We made this country so complex, and our governmental system so complex, with these elitists and bureaucrats and people that go to Harvard and Princeton and all. Like, literally, go back to the basics. It's very simple. Go back and read the First Amendment. We don't need a book on the First Amendment. It literally, freedom of speech is you have freedom to say what you want. Freedom of the press was literally you as an individual had the right to write out your grievances on a piece of paper, go down to your local printing press and print it without restriction, and then distribute it in the town square, and the government couldn't say anything. Like, that's as simple as you can possibly get. And what have we turned this into is the biggest nightmare of nuance and debate. And it's like, no, just, you can say what you want. You can write what you want. You can own a gun. You can peaceably assemble without restriction from the government. It's the simplest thing that we've made so complex with these Ivy League elitists. At a certain point, I think it's going to be the everyday people that are able to bring this country back. It's not going to be the experts. It's not going to be the people with degrees. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah, the interesting thing with listening to you, I just for the first time equated the First Amendment with mind, body, spirit. Mind, I speak. Body, I protect. Spirit, I
Freedom of
go to
religion.
church. So it's like all of a sudden the Greek, you know, what
Philosophy.
the elements of human nature is established by the Greeks.
Yep.
It's all there.
Yep.
You know, and I consider freedom of the press as being an extension of freedom of speech. But okay, so the thing is that yeah, that's why I like the First Amendment. It's easy for me to grok, but and that is a stranger in a strange man land reference. So he didn't own that first. But anyway, the thing is that unfortunately, again, language is interpretational, and if you already have a disposition towards a particular behavior or outcome, that is going to affect your interaction with those documents. So I'm pro speech, but I don't want you to say this. Well, you know, when our founding fathers got together, they were not aware of, or I'm pro speech no matter which way. Well, you know, I think you should be able to yell fire in a theater.
If
You know?
there's a real fire, you can.
Well, yeah, but see, all I can tell you is I don't think that should even be a question. I think you should be able to yell it anytime you want because it's not said. There's no mention of theater in there. The point is that we have to stop being right, and that's our biggest enemy: the desire to be right and not allow the truth to speak for itself.
Politically, I am diametrically opposed to Alan Dershowitz. He's a leftist. I'm a rightist. However, he is one of the few experts on the Constitution that I trust because he's an honest. He's honest. I may disagree with him on 99% of things, but he's honest.
Except when it came to forced vaccinations, and he was dead wrong.
Look what happened to Bill Maher. Bill Maher is being eaten by the left because he no longer reiterates or no longer spouts liberal jargon. Regurgitates. Or as Sally said, he's no longer a horizontal. Well, he was never a horizontal thinker. He's a brilliant man. But the thing is that he's been calling out the opponents of liberty, and you know, and that's fantastic. And look what happened to hey, let's get. I'm just curious what Jeff's opinion is about this. The Fetterman phenomena.
About what? Just Fetterman in general?
I'm just dropping that bomb on you.
Yeah. No, I think that I disagree with him on a lot, but I think the thing with Fetterman is he's a free thinker, and I can live with Bill Maher, Fetterman, old school Bernie Sanders, even where back before he sold out. You know, people like that who I diametrically disagree with them on a whole host of things, but they're true believers. I can deal with that all day long. What I can't deal with are people who put party over principle, and people that will change their positions because their party or their favorite political candidate say so. And I think Fetterman has shown that even though I disagree with him on a whole host of issues, he's willing to buck the system. And that's one of the reasons why I like Massey. And it's one of the reasons I like Rand Paul. It's one of the reasons I like Ron Paul. It's one of the reasons I like these guys is because they can't be bought by the political system. And whether you agree with them or you disagree with them, it doesn't matter. I know that if I entered into a conversation with any of those guys, they would tell me what they really think, and they're going to vote along the lines of the way that they really think. And that is sorely lacking in society. We need more of that. We need to encourage that kind of behavior in both parties, in both Democrat and Republican. It should not be like when we elect a representative or a senator, their job is to represent us. We are voting for them to be our mouthpiece in Washington, D.C. and pass legislation and be our voice as the people. And technically speaking, you go back to the founding of our country, It was supposed to be the representatives represent the people and the Senate represents the states. And I think it's the 17th Amendment off the top of my head that in my opinion should be repealed, to where we should
Yes.
go back to where the Senate is selected by the state legislatures, and the representatives are voted on by the people, because the whole idea was to have a check and a balance, where you had, one chamber was beholden to the states, one chamber was beholden to the people, and then there that's why you would send bills back and forth to discuss and debate, so that way there was a check and a balance. It was representing both entities at the same time. And it's like, when you actually think about it, the way that we do politics today, which is we elect the people that represent us, but then our representatives are beholden to the president or the speaker of the house or whoever the leader of that political party is, and they're just supposed to do what they're told. That's not how it's actually supposed to be. And I cannot get behind that. And I've had so many conversations behind the scenes with politicians and people that are running for office or whatever it is, and they're all like, "Oh, I'm not going to sell out." They always do. There's only a handful of people that don't. Fetterman is one of those guys that is not sold out. His worldview is bad, but also he's willing to buck the system, and he's a free thinker, and he thinks for himself. And I can support that all day long.
If we repealed that amendment and went back to the states picking the senators that will represent the states, you wouldn't have Chuck Schumer and Cory Booker and other people going all around the country taking money in for their next campaign from special interest groups. No, they are going to hopefully concentrate on what's best for their state, the state that they were appointed to represent. New Jersey is Democrat these days, so we're going to keep getting Democrat senators appointed. Nothing we can do about that. But if they were to work for the betterment of New Jersey rather than the betterment of special interests that want them to vote certain ways that'll hurt New Jersey, that would be better.
Well, when a politician is more concerned about politics than he is about policy, then he stopped being a true politician and started being basically nothing more than a business concern. So the lack of integrity, the lack of honor, is an issue, because Fetterman, if we can use him as an example, because I'm a Pennsylvanian, so he was a shock to the system that he actually snapped out of his condition and became somebody that I respect.
A Democrat has to have a stroke for his brain to work properly.
But you know what? He did. He went through the process, and I'm proud of him for choosing that. So anyway, the thing is that in regards to honor, we were fortunate enough to interview a gentleman named Barry Todd, a retired captain in Air Force Rangers, and he defined integrity as honor as doing the right thing even when you don't want to. And the thing is that is something that we need from our politicians, the willingness to do the right thing regardless of the circumstances. And in other words, if it's the right thing to do, then just freaking do it. What is the debate there? So we need more, as Barry Todd would say, more integrity, more honor.
Messages.
Yeah, it's not about keeping the ship afloat. It's about willing to take the risk of crashing it on the rocks to save lives.
Yep, agreed.
So, I think that has something to do with what we were just talking about. It's just that I'm listening to you, and you constantly jog things out of me. So go ahead. I'm satisfied with your Fetterman response.
Okay,
so you're
good.
free.
I passed.
You're free.
I'm good. Yes.
All right. Finally, do you have anything you could tell the viewers what to specify what makes Pickax different from Facebook, Twitter, MeWe, all those other platforms?
Yeah, so really the big differentiator is going to be that basically, like I said earlier, like you are the algorithm, so the people decide what gets seen, what doesn't get seen. It's not some arbitrary, topic based algorithm that decides what they think you want, and it's like no, you decide based upon who you follow, what you engage with, what you like, all that kind of stuff. We do some really cool integrations with like if you post a podcast like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it's playable in the news feed as if it's native to the platform. Same thing with Rumble videos as well. So if you post a Rumble video on Pickaxe, it's playable in it just like you would if you were to upload a video to the platform, which is pretty cool. And we're working with Rumble and doing some more integrations and some things like that. But I think the really nice thing with this platform, especially at this iteration where we are, and we're barely just beginning, is that you actually have direct access to people. You can actually build relationships. You can build friendships. You can communicate with the same people. Like you can't do that on a lot of these other platforms because the algorithms decide who sees what, and a lot of times it's not the same people every single time. It's a different subset of people every time you post something are going to see it than the last time. So within a platform like this, we can kind of make social again, social media social again, and also for like content creators. You can actually have more direct access to your audience. You can monetize your content in a variety of ways. We've got rev share, we've got affiliate marketing that's built into the platform. People can, become a paid subscriber to your content. We're going to roll out tipping. We're going to roll out a bunch of different things as well. We've got a beta feature right now. We're going to roll it out fully in the next few months, where you can actually collect emails and send out emails directly from the platform, which as a creator is massive for you. Within that as well, then we'll offer our creators opportunities to send out sponsored emails if they like, or different forms of monetization and things like that, to where you can now monetize that access to your audience if you'd like. So we've got a variety of things that we're rolling out and that we're working on behind the scenes that I think we can bring everybody together and begin to have these conversations like what we did today. But then also, you're never going to deal with the algorithmic manipulation like you do on other platforms. You're going to have direct access to your audience. You're going to have all these really cool features that are going to help you as a creator to grow and to build and promote your shows and monetize your content and all that. So we've got a lot of really cool things coming down the pipeline as well.
What about PDFs? Will you be able to put PDFs up?
Yeah, eventually. I believe that you can in messages, probably private messages, and you could actually do like group messages as well, to where you could have like a group message thread going, and you could do PDFs. I think we'll eventually put that out into state like a regular post as well. I believe you can as well on so like you can write articles as well, and I believe you could do that there as well.
All right, I'm glad you said that we could put the Rumble videos right up, because I'd rather put the Rumble version out there and promote Rumble than promote YouTube. But I know that most people, can easily access YouTube. Michael doesn't go to Rumble because he doesn't have it on his phone or his laptop. He's stubborn. So he watches everything on YouTube. But I'd rather promote YouTube. I'd rather promote our side than the other side. So
hey, just get the Pickaxe app when that drops, and you'll be able to watch all of your favorite Rumble people directly within the Pickaxe app, and you're good to go. You don't need the Rumble. You don't have to
download Rumble. You're going to have to download Pickaxe though.
Well, but the thing is, they can also, if they want to see your beautiful face again, they can go to our website, which is the view from here behind enemy lines on
viewfromhere.net.
Yeah,
I think.
No, I'm talking about our
website.
Our website.
Yeah, isn't it the view from here.net, or is it view from here behind enemy
Squarespace.com. Squarespace.com. Squarespace. We're on Squarespace.
No, but if you do a search for the view from here.net, I believe it takes you right there.
Okay, I didn't know that.
No, I can't find it.
Okay, so thank you very much. You've been fantastic.
It's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that you've started this new social media platform.
Yeah, basically a town square for everybody.
Yep, exactly. The original tagline that we were running with was it's the social media platform that the founding fathers would have established. So
nice.
Yeah.
Where'd you get the name Pickaxe? Is it, as Michael said, like your
Data mining.
mining data or what?
No, we're doing the opposite. So we're not collecting any data at all. So we don't need it. You know, I figured out a way that we can target ads without collecting data. So we're not developing AI. So I don't need it. I don't need it there either. But the idea for Pickaxe really came from this. I wanted something that emoted like manual labor. Free speech is messy. It's dirty. You got to get in the heat of it. And also, you know, the idea of kind of picking away at the powers that be, whether it's big tech, big corporations, big anything. You know,
the truth.
Getting in the trenches, doing the dirty work, getting it done, all that. And then I also wanted something that we could turn into a verb. And so on the platform, if you like something, you pick it. If you don't, you axe it. And so instead of like and dislike, you pick or you axe. So it all worked out.
Very nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, we're going to put the link to Pickaxe under this interview on our website, and I'll be publishing this tomorrow. It'll be on. I'll be putting it on all the platforms I published to, the ones I've mentioned before: X, Facebook, Threads, MeWe, Gab, even.
We have to do that because we're both members of Pickaxe now.
No,
Yep.
Pickaxe, definitely. Yeah, Pickaxe.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm going to put it up on Pickaxe as soon as I post it to Rumble.
There you go.
perfect. Sounds good.
Oh, did you freeze there?
We should end the.
Oh no!
Let's
All right,
end.
Jeff. We can't. We don't see any movement on your end. I hope you're still there.
End it.
We're going to end this now. Welcome. Hope you enjoyed this episode of The View from Here, Behind Enemy Lines, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye bye.